It's good to see you guys. I thought there was good work today. I thought, initially when we started, there was storms in the area and lightning strikes and that, so we stayed in the indoor and did some work in there. I had a team run scrimmage along with some special teams work that was really high impact and a lot of good things. I think offensively ran the ball really well during that time. And then cleared up out this way, so got on the buses and headed on over. Initially in the team meeting, talked about, wherever we're at, wherever we're playing. It's a parking lot, it's a practice field, it's an indoor, it's McLean Stadium, wherever we're playing. Let's line up and play. Our skills, right, our talents can adapt to whatever the situation is. I think a little bit of the fight that we've been fighting is it has to be this certain way and have to have these certain reps and that. And so I feel like that was improved. And it was, guys were intentional about it, so it was good to see. I thought, in the meat of the scrimmage, right, there were some really good runs. I think, as you look at it a whole, probably too far, few and in between, but there were some positive things, things that we've seen throughout the week. And was good to get that to transfer over to Saturday. I thought throw game wise, there was some struggle, whether it was timing or protection or whether it was, I think just nerves. I think some of the, practice and ball can spit out, and then let's get into stadium, different environment. I think those are things that showed up. But I thought guys battled through it, and I thought, in that second part of the scrimmage, we're able to get some movement and some momentum and a lot of plays. And so the guys were able to fight through a lot to get a little. And at this stage of it, we'll take it. Good week. This past week was very strong in terms of the work we put in. And so we've really got one more week of camp. And we'll end with a second scrimmage before we get into a different schedule and a mock game prior to our first game. So take any questions you guys got.
Cherry Hill, Baylor Bear Insider. Dave, you kind of touched on it, but the offensive line, where do you see that development in terms of, their ability just to kind of create holes and protect as well?
A lot of positive things. I think we're looking for just consistency, really, and I think some of it is in competitive spots. I think O-line wise, we are in the spot now to where if it is a practice drill, if it is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it's that, I think there's a lot of positive, and there's some edge with it and a whole lot of energy with it. I think when we move into different spots, it's taking that style of play and applying it, like I say, into a stadium or into a different environment. And so I think there was some good. We can be better. I think the growth and leadership is really strong. I think Xavier Newman, proud of him. He's fighting, and his leadership skills, I think, are the best I've ever seen with him. I think Connor Galvin, I hear more from Connor in the back than I've ever had. And so, there's a really strong care factor. There's a really strong connectedness. And so I think we got that going for us. We'll get to where we need to get to.
Coach, you just mentioned Xavier Newman there. Every player's mentioned him, and I can't really recall that in the past. What do you think has clicked for him? Is the last season? What do you think has sort of tweaked his wiring to where he's now leading that way?
I think he's trusting guys. I think Zay's always been a guy that's kind of held stuff in tight, and you really had to reach a certain pinnacle or point before he would let you in. And I think this team and this group of guys and these group of coaches, I think, have been able to create a safe environment where Zay can be Zay. And I think we've had some meetings where he's been vulnerable, and there's a strong connection. And I think he, the guys can see him for him. I don't think like there's a mask or nothing. And, they got his back. And so that's good to see.
you have a very veteran-laden secondary. I mean, corners, safeties, everything. What are you seeing from that group? And being an older group, what are you kind of asking of them? And do you see some progress with the young guys behind them?
No, it's a good question. Yeah, there's a lot of savvy in that group. That would be the word that would come to mind. I think whether it's you're blitzing and you ain't showing blitz, or it's one high and you're showing two high, and the timing of it and the ability to disguise, I think is very strong. I think it's 11 personnel, or there's one tight end, 3 receivers in the game, and it's this tight end, or it's that receiver, it means these plays, right? Or this receiver is lined up here, it means that play. Those guys are calling it out, right? And so the savviness, the intelligence, craftiness, I think would be the number one selling point with that group. There is a fair amount of athleticism. I think there's length at the corner. There's length in the post. I think in the intermediate guys, with the Christian Morgan and a Jalen Petrie, there's the ability to blitz, set edges, fit in the run game. And so there's some multiple pieces that you can switch and trade off and use in a variety of ways. And I think, right now at the stage of camp, Ron's using all of those things. And so I think when things start to kind of gear down to an opponent and a game week and everything, we can hone in on specific specifics and find real hard stone cold jobs for guys. Right now, guys are kind of exploring. And I think, it's probably the time to do that.
Dave, I know coming into fall camp, there were a lot of open spots on the offensive side of the ball. Has anyone stepped up to maybe solidify their spot in that starting group?
No, I think that's ongoing. I think today is a big piece to that puzzle. I think anytime where you have a fair amount of prep time going into a contest, and you have all eyes on this technique or this play, and it's been talked about in this situation and repped, and we're planning on it, and everyone knows it's going to be called here, and can you execute, and what if something goes bad, can you get it out of your mind to move on to the next play? All of those things, I think, are really the currency of guys paying their dues and moving up the depth chart. And so I think, the more competitive we get, the more that we can see kind of where things are at. And so O-line-wise, a fair amount of improvement. I think, I think Gall's coming on. I think, Casey Phillips has had a really good end of the week. I think Elijah Ellis has been consistently improving. I think Khalil has been consistent, which is really good. It's good to say, And so there's a lot of positive things. I think when you take a long-term view of kind of where it's been and where it's going, you feel good about it.
Obviously going from a defensive coordinator at LSU to Baylor last year being your first season as the head coach, fast forwarding to the present time, how much more maybe settled in are you in that head coaching position after having 2020 under your belt?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of work still kind of ongoing. It is something. I think your growth as a person is really strong. I think staying connected to football is almost is almost like a dessert. Really, you're really trying to get your proteins and your green beans and everything else. But I feel like it's been a lot of work, but I think I have grown tremendously. As a person being here, I know my family has. We've benefited from being at Baylor, and so blessed to be here.
Coach, this spring you talked a lot about wanting to meet the families of the players, include the families. How is that effort, and then of course including them in a day like today, paid dividends for this team?
Yeah, I think it's way important. There's been just a couple things come up that have affected Baylor football, and we make a point to communicate with the families and let them know kind of where things are at and thoughts and reactions and kind of get out in front of it, if you will. I think, having events in the spring with parents, having Zoom conferences with parents prior to the start of spring ball or a fall camp or scrimmages. I think all of those things are important to kind of keep everybody, connected with a single idea of kind of what it is. I think anytime there's some uncertainty, things that you really don't want in there can find a way to get in there. And so I think to have that message that's connected, I think is way important. Parents have been big on that. And then I think also, it gives me insight into their sons, in terms of things that I'm picking up on and signals I'm receiving, but they could say something way quick and easy, and it just, like, that's it, puts it in perspective. And so it's been a real positive for us.
Going back, you had mentioned that fall camp this is kind of the last week before you transition into a new way of doing things. Is the goal to have a kind of starting group solidified as you move into that next phase, or is the plan to kind of push it all the way to week 1?
Yeah, we will push it until we have it set. And so I think, our goal is to have that prior to that first game. And it may not be at that point, but that is what we're going to try to do. I think, this past week, fair amount of competitions that have been propped up in practice, and some of it was challenging just with the shells and helmets and all these things that in terms of the procedure of adding on equipment. I think now that we're past that point and there's a fair amount of pads on, we can be we can have a little bit more variety in the competition that we're pulling out in the daily practices. And we need it for the quarterback spot, the O-line spots, and various others.